So I wanted to explain today how they trick you on immigration. Um, so what they basically rely on, the bad faith actors online, is they don't teach you anything. Uh, um, they don't teach you anything, or they don't inform you about anything, and that is intentional. They don't teach you how immigration works. They don't teach you or explain. They don't attempt to explain why immigrants might be mostly men. They just don't end up explaining to you. They don't tell you, why people are fleeing their countries. And remember, all of this stuff is basically intentional. It's all intentional. Um, they don't teach you about international law, and that's also intentional. They hyper focus on the fraction of immigrants that actually commit the crimes, and that is intentional because they want to fill you with the idea that all illegal immigrants are like violent criminals. They might have broken the law, to come into the country, but they're not actually like most of them aren't actually violent criminals, and they don't teach you this stuff because it's intentional, because it fills you the idea that most of these immigrants are criminals. And when you actually portray immigrants as criminals, what that does then is it basically instills fear in you, and that is intentional. And either these bad faith actors, they know that, or they don't care and they're lazy and they don't bother to explain things. But a lot of the times it's because they're intentionally not informing you and teaching you how things work. I'm kind of reading off a thing a little bit because of, it's a lot to go through. So it might sound a bit robotic, but there's nothing I can do about that. Because like I tend to call, I'm trying to think of what to call it. I think I call it, is it cherry picking propaganda? Where they, through being vague and not going into detail, they make you think that the minority of a group is actually the majority. And what you gotta understand about any group you can think of: black people, white people, LGBTQ people, left-wing people, right-wing people, conservative or liberal, any group you can think of, only a small fraction of them are going to be like amoral, dangerous people. That's like the same with any group that you pick. And the reason why I'm going into detail a little bit is because I'm giving you the detail that they're missing out. And what I might do is I might go through the list again and go through each one and explain the detail and stuff like that. I started off just going through the list, but then I kind of like degraded or whatever. I lost my plan. I started going in detail anyway. But yeah, so cherry picking propaganda, like I said, they through being vague, they make you think that the minority is actually the majority. It's like when it comes to the left, they want you to make you think that the majority of the left is like woke reactionary people, when I imagine that most leftists actually centre left. And even if they're just left, that's not bad. There's violent extremism on either side, which is both equally bad if they're committing to violence. But being just left wing in itself does not mean that they're corrupt or bad faith or whatever. So there's two things they also do to demonize immigrants. And what they do is they try to make you think that they're stealing something from you or they're taking something from you. So one of the things they do is they basically give you the idea that they're taking your jobs, which I think, nobody has a right to any job. It's the person that passes the interviews and the person that's most qualified or whatever is usually who the job belongs to. It belongs to anyone who gets it and passes the interview, whoever the interviewers pick, the job picks. So, I don't think they're really taking your jobs, but they do that to induce fear. They also say how they're taking your money in some way, like they're taking advantage of the benefits. They're taking your benefits. They do this to fearmonger about immigrants as well, because it makes you dislike them because you think that they're taking something from you. When what you understand about the world is that I think the races and people and cultures are meant to mix. I think that is a natural progression of society. I did do an argument where the neutral argument to explain why you need to slow down immigration is because then you give people a chance to acclimate to the new political climate, and people are being forced to experience races and cultures being introduced, and it's happening too fast for their brains and their perceptions to keep up. So it's not giving them a chance to perceive it as normal. So slowing down immigration would actually help people to acclimate to the new social climate in society. They don't really explain to you what the real cause of immigration is, and it's because of corrupt, authoritarian, oppressive, dictators that take away equal rights and egalitarianism and stuff like that. So they don't teach you why they are leaving and why they are fleeing and why they're coming into into the country, and that's also intentional because ignorance is the point. So you're ill-informed, you don't know what's going on, you're confused, and then in confusion it leads to frustration, it leads to anger. So yeah. And I kind of mentioned it a little bit, but I didn't explain how the thing that makes the West great and why people want to come here, it's because of leftism or liberalism, right? It's because of the freedoms that we have here, and the lack of authority and oppression, and having a lack of theocracy and having a secular society with multiple religions where everybody can practice religion freely. So the things that makes the West great is liberalism. They won't tell you that, and that's also intentional. And the theme is, find every now and again, is the whole point is that this stuff is all intentional. Being vague is the point. Not giving detail is the point. Yeah, I've got other things that make the left great is feminism and equal rights for women. And I've already mentioned egalitarianism, equal rights between every group of people. Multiculturalism is a part of a liberal, free society. We are naturally meant to mix and naturally meant to diverse. If you want to talk about God's plan, surely God made us different, test us, bring us to try and make us be strong and learn to accept and love each other. Love thy neighbor. Because I think that you hear people say that liberalism has ruined this country, and it's just like, Western countries, the UK, America, France, Germany, and Italy. Liberalism is actually what makes the countries great, and without us, we would just be, I don't know, would we be West then? Would we be East? Um, so I was going to explain some other stuff about. Okay, I'll do that. No, what I say I was going to do? I said I was going to start from the beginning and explain into more detail. Um, I've gone into a little bit how they don't teach you anything. They don't teach you why they are coming, why they are leaving. They don't teach you why immigration exists. That's it. The reason why there ends up being and why there has been a massive influx of immigrants in the last 20 or 30 years is because there keeps on popping up different migrant crises. And that's causing people then to flee their country. Um, so it's like they don't tell you and they leave it out that it's immigrant crises that are creating this problem as a result of authoritarian oppressive governments. And they don't tell you that, and yet again, it's because it's intentional. Because they don't teach you about international law, ethics, morality. They don't try to teach you like love and compassion and learning to get along. They don't teach you like about international law, how like because of international law where there's certain like ethical and moral obligations you have to abide by, and these are good. So like if there are oppressive governments, that there's some sort of like disciplining or consequences for their oppression. So international law is important, and they don't teach you that because because it's intentional. I think that's it for the video. Don't like and subscribe. One. They don't teach you anything, or they don't inform you about that. And that is intentional. They don't teach you how immigration works. Uh, they don't teach you or explain. They don't attempt to explain why immigrants might be mostly men. They just don't end up explaining to you. Okay, that's where I missed out. Is why they are mostly men. Um, yeah, I think I have to, isn't I? They don't explain why they're mostly men. I try to think of reasons myself, and it could be that, making the journey from one country to another isn't like the safest of journeys to make, and sometimes the women aren't strong enough to make the journey, so then it's the men that end up mostly coming over here. I thought one element it could be is that the men come over first, and then they try to come over and make a little bit of money, and then they send the money back over to their home country to bring over their partners and their families. Or it's just a matter of the man comes over claiming asylum, and then once they claim asylum, they're trying to claim asylum for their parents. Um, and like there could be an element of limited space on the boats and things like that. Um, yeah, and there could be other reasons as well that I can't think of, but they don't teach you, why they're mostly men because they want you to assume. And so I heard someone asking a question in a comment section and saying like, "Oh, we don't know who they are," and that's kind of like the point of looking at statistics and facts, is because statistically you can look at how many of these people statistically are likely to be criminals and things like that. And yet again, they don't explain you these things as intentional because ignorance and being vague is the point. In order to come to a conclusion, you need information to lead yourself to a conclusion. That's like the element of agnosticism. That's an element of agnosticism. So, how can you come to proper conclusions if you're not given the full information, if you're not given the full context? And that's why it's intentionally the point not to teach and to be vague. And, concentrating on immigrants only distracts you from policies. And that's where I was going to explain as well what I figured out with the grift of reform when it comes to immigration. So the argument as to why people want to control immigration is because they want to concentrate on British citizens first. We've got enough homeless in our country. We need to concentrate on our citizens first. But if they are cutting immigration, if they want to cut taxes for the rich, they want to cut the government, and they want to cut social programs, and they want to cut all those four things at the same time. Because surely, if you wanted to help the citizens, surely you would cut immigration, keep taxes the same, keep the government, and keep benefits the same, or increase them if they actually cared about actually helping, home-born citizens. Because, limiting the government, the whole point is to, lower benefits and lower how much the government does for you. And it's just like, they're not going to be able to fund and help the homeless or improve education if, they're cutting the government and they're cutting benefits. So cutting them all for them at the same time kind of shows and proves that they're not actually going to do anything to help the British-born citizens. They're just not going to help citizens first, because without higher taxes on the rich, it's not going to happen. So it's just like what would reforms, defence, and counter to that be? Yeah.